Hey, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm excited about today's project because we get to use a very versatile silver silk in today's bracelet design. It is hollow mesh and it is the most absolutely fun product. Well, one of them. They're all fun products, right? But I think it's exceptionally special because you can fill it with all kinds of different materials. And this includes beads, leather, um, what else can you fill? Fiber cord, I've done that before. All kinds of different stringing materials. You can double layer it. There's just no end to the fun. Let me show you the project that we're going to be making today. We're going to be using beads to fill this particular chain up today. And what's extra special is that is a double strand bracelet design. So we'll be using some beads from one of my favorite bead companies, Jesse James Beads, and combining it all with the hollow mesh design. So with that, why don't we go ahead and talk about our tools and materials as we get going with this project? So let's talk about tools first. We're going to need a pair of chain nose pliers, which look like this. This is from a company called Weber's, which is one of my favorite tool companies. They're very affordable, economically priced pliers, and they're insanely strong. I love using these, and I think you guys would too. All right, there we need some, let's see, cutters, which were actually the first item. These are my Lindstrom cutters. They are extremely sharp, perfect for cutting through silver silk or beading wire or even craft wire. I don't recommend these for memory wire, even though I've cheated a few times, but you can buy a separate pair for that and a separate pair for your other softer wires. And you can that way keep them nice and sharp over time. All right, I've got a pair of Xuron crimp pliers. These are amazing. They've got a very tapered end. They can do up to 3 different size crimps, and it's got that little V-notch at the very end. We'll get more into these whenever we get down to crimping, of course. You will need also a pair of round nose pliers, also from Weber's. I love these. They have a very nice tapered end. They don't go too tiny. They go to a very good point, though. I think this is probably maybe a 1.5 millimeter size loop at the very tip, if you can kind of get up that far, all the way down to what would be almost a 7 millimeter loop. So lots of versatility, and again, they're just really strong pliers. And finally, you'll need a hollow mesh tool, which I will demonstrate in a little bit of how to use this. This is a great little tool for if you've crushed or accidentally have crushed your hollow mesh knitted wire chain, and you kind of want to bring it back out, and so that you could fill it with up to 5 millimeter size beads. This tool is included for free in your package. That if you buy hollow mesh from silversilkonline.com, I will throw in one of these for you, so that you don't have to worry about grabbing it from anywhere. And so with that, let's go ahead and talk about hollow mesh, which looks like this. 6 needles stitch this beautiful wire into a knitted wire sock that is extremely flexible. Comes in 23 colors, I believe. This one happens to be red. And again, you can fill it up to anywhere between 3 to 4.5 comfortably, size beads or leather chain into it, and make your own textile. What's great is mixing materials, which you'll see today. We're going to be using contrasting color beads in with the red mesh, and it's just going to create a whole different texture and look to this particular design. So we talked about the hollow mesh tool, so let me demonstrate quickly how that works. You're basically going to feed it into your open end as such. And then you kind of just push it through. You could see that I have a little kink here at the end of my knitted wire. So we're just going to try and work that out. The idea is just to sort of twirl it back and forth until it all comes through. Keep pushing it down onto the dowel rod there and then out. So you're just kind of sliding it over and out until you get to the end. You can do this to precondition your mesh. That way, you know for sure, and it's 100% guaranteed that size 4.5 millimeters to maybe even 5 will fit through the chain very comfortably. So you can see that I got my kink out and my wire is ready to go in size, which is awesome. So that's how to use the tool, the hollow mesh tool. So let's talk about our other findings. We're going to need a couple of hollow mesh cord ends. These are specially designed from the same factory where I get all of my silver silk findings made. And it's got my beautiful knitted wire texture printed, not printed, I guess, engraved in it. And it's got a nice little like 1.5 millimeter hole at the top. You can feed beading wire, you can feed craft wire, or even leather cord through this, just depending on what you're filling the hollow mesh with. And the beads and the wire will fit quite nicely into that little 6 millimeter sized inner diameter there. And I was gonna add to that, now I don't remember what it was. Oh, the layers, the plating layers. My findings are exceptionally amazing because and they're very unmatched in the industry just because these findings, and across the board of Silver Silk, into the custom findings, you'll see that there are 5 layers of plating applied to the end caps and the different, again, the different findings that I've got. This ensures a high quality polish through time. They are tarnish resistant and they come in 6 different colors. So I highly recommend if you can grab all of the different findings in the different colors, and just have a stash to go, you are going to get very high quality designs at the end of it that are sustainable over time. All right, so have a couple of those, and that's my spiel on why you should grab the findings. But you'll also know that it's silver silk because of the silver silk that's engraved into the logo is engraved into the actual finding. Isn't that cool? That's how you really know what it is. So you'll need a toggle clasp. You'll need jump rings. The jump rings don't have the SS on it, but rest assured that these are from the same plating factory. You will need some glass drucks in size 4 millimeter. Actually, I don't have any drugs on hand, but I do have 4 millimeter very shiny fire polish beads that we're going to be using. This is a fun contrasting color. As you can see, I've already sort of pre-strung it, and the 4 millimeter size is going to work perfectly for the size of the mesh. And I've already went ahead and strung on the equivalent of the hollow mesh size that I'm working with, which is roughly about 7 inches. So just have those out to the side because we'll be working on that first. And then, of course, I showed you the beading wire, but let me show you the brand. I'm using Softflex medium beading wire. You can really use any color. It's not really going to show in your design, but I am using the antique brass color, which disappears quite nicely into the design. But it's also beautiful left exposed if you're working on a different type of floating necklace design or illusion necklace. In this case, not going to apply here. So as long as it's a medium-sized beading wire, you are in good shape. You will need 10 inches of that for this project, for the first bracelet. And then you'll need some crimp tubes, which are also from Softflex Company. They don't have a seam, which is great for crimping, and they've got a really thick wall. So you're going to have a very secure crimp at the end of it all, and they are tarnish resistant, which is amazing. Very high quality crimps, love them to bits. And then we've got our second strand bracelet. Now, I went ahead and pre-strung this, but we're going to talk about it. All right, so again, you're going to need the same amount of beading wire, which you've already seen, and the crimps, which I've showed you. But let's talk about the beads for a second, because I have got a mixture of between 6 and 10 millimeter beads, perhaps even a bit larger for these cloisonne beads. And these are again from Jesse James Beads, and they are absolutely stunning. Came from one of their mixes. I've also put in some size 8 seed beads, and I'm gonna lay it here for a second. And so if you pause the video at this point, you can follow the stringing along. And I also wanted to go ahead and talk about the jump rings because with charms, sometimes you need jump rings. And so just have a bunch of those on hand and string them into your design. Finally, you will need some head pins, and a couple of charms, which I've already got sort of picked out. You can find all kinds of charms and baubles and beads in your stash, I'm sure, which you will need the pin for to create a little bauble or charm at the end of your bracelet if you want to. Always a choice. And just because it's here, I'm going to go ahead and flash over that size 8 seed beads. This is in a lovely bronze color that I sort of just use as a spacer throughout the design. And with that, let's get into step one, which we've already completed, which is stringing the size 4 millimeter beads to the size of the length of your bracelet. So really here you can kind of experiment and play. Typically bracelets tend to be about the 7 or 8 inch mark. And so you can just use a ruler and lay out as many beads as you need to achieve that. If you already have your favorite bracelet on hand, measure it ahead of time and then just use that as sort of your template for stringing any bracelet that you want to, whether it's made with silver silk or beads. All right, second step, which we've already done, is measuring and cutting the hollow mesh to the size of your bracelet. I have a little bit left that's extra, and the reason for that is I want to show you guys how to cut it because it's too easy to just chop this with a pair of um, cutters, but there is a problem to that, and I wanted to address it when we get to that step. All right. So what we're going to do is essentially fill our hollow mesh with the beads. And the way that we're going to do that is using a little shortcut that I enjoy, which is making a loop at the top with a crimp that we're not going to crimp it though. We are just going to create a little loose loop at the top. The reason for this is that the wire because it's just a piece of wire, it's going to have a tendency to get caught up in the knits with this. And what we don't want to do is make it harder for ourselves to then fish out and have to try and restring everything. Instead, making that loose little loop at the top with the crimp holds everything in place, and you could just kind of slide this right along as you go. Isn't that pretty? It's quite festive, really. All right, you could see how easy that was. I did widen my mesh with the hollow mesh tool from earlier, so essentially that just makes everything go by so fast. All right, so at the end, what we're going to do is basically pinch our mesh just right along. I've got a couple bead stoppers to help me out with keeping that wire on, but I'm just going to pinch the end over that last bead a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and string on my hollow mesh cord end. And you can see that that fits over quite nicely. And that gold color complements those beads just perfectly. But I'm going to go ahead and create a loop here at the top. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab another crimp. Okay. You can crimp this, in fact, to a jump ring because we're going to be attaching our jump ring onto the toggle clasp here in a bit, but you can string back through the crimp. I'm going to go through the hollow mesh. And if you are working with enough wire, you can actually go back through some of the beads too. In fact, for this one side, I don't think I need to do that. It's going to be pretty well hidden into that end cap, um, quite possibly. So let me just pull this back out. And I'm going to have about a half inch, maybe just a little bit less of that wire sticking out. And I want to give myself a loop that is somewhat forgiving, meaning that I want it to be close to about, we'll say 2.5 to not even 3 millimeters. Just a nice small loop that allows flexibility for your jump ring. Sometimes jump rings have a tendency to fall out. Stuff gets loose or it gets pulled tight or you accidentally snag it on something. You want to make sure that you have enough room to put that jump ring back in, just in case. I always like to have a little bit of insurance with some of my jewelry pieces because you just never know. All right, you're gonna go into your crimp pliers, and with the Zuron ones, you kind of just put it into that V-shaped notch, and you want to make sure your wires are separated. so that when you push down, your wires get sort of separated into the two different channels. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's not exactly perfect, but here's what you're looking for. So you can see that little divot in between those two channels, and then you just rotate it on its side and press down on your pliers as such. Okay, and there you have a folded crimp. Now, what we're going to do is slide our end cap right over our beads, and, well, our stringing wire, sorry. And it looks like we're going to have to cut some of this stuff down. So here is where this is, or here's the part where we're going to cut all this essentially. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to count a couple knits above that last bead because this is really truly too much. And you're going to cut around the diameter of the knitted wire chain. The reason for that is it leaves the wire uncrushed. You're going to get lots of these little wire bits falling out, which is fine. That tends to happen. And you can see that one of my wire is stuck in one of those knits. I'm just going to try and cut that out here. There we go. Okay, it's really caught up in there. Okay. All right, so at this point, I've freed my wire, which is perfect. I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the crimp. And I'm going to kind of just slide all this stuff down to where it's set into my cap. As you can see, um, it's perfectly sandwiched into the cap. I was trying to find my words. And we're going to do the same thing to this side. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze that wire, push the wire over the bead a little bit, and grab my second end cap, grab my crimp, grab another jump ring, and then go back through the jump ring, or the crimp as well as the cap. Now here, you should have enough wire to go back through some of those beads. So the way to do this is just to give yourself some extra room here and then just slide it through a few of the beads. You could even go through just one or two. I'm going to pull this back out for a second and actually go through it. My check beads might be a little bit small for this. We're going to see. We're going to check this out. I think that works. I'm going to do the one bead. There we go. Just needed to kind of loosen up a little bit. All right, and what I'm going to do is actually push this out of the wire on this one side. Get it through. There we go. Aha, okay. So now whenever I go to pull on this wire, it should tighten everything up quite nicely. Let's pull that back down. Now that check bead is really nice and tight in there. So let's try. Normally, this should be okay, but I think where the issue is that bead hole is a little bit tight. And so that's where I'm getting that extra force from. But I think I got it. What I'm ultimately measuring is the flexibility, and you can see that I sort of marred up my jump ring. So I'm going to set that one to the side and open up a new one, and we'll just get that pushed right back in and attached as if nothing happened. There we go. And, my little extra mistake there is covered up thanks to the end cap. This feels nice and flexible, and there's no extra wire sticking out. So just requires a little bit of finessing sometimes to get this going. And at this point, I'm ready to crimp because it's not going to get any more perfect than this. There we go. Okay, and simply just trim this off as close to the cap as possible. And voila. We have got a beautiful knitted wire design. And so we went ahead and just did step 5, which is crimping and attaching the jump ring, and then just trimming off any extra wire. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about our second strand, which is already at play here. And what we're going to do is crimp this to the jump ring as well. Now, in the picture, I've got that toggle clasp attached, so I feel compelled to go ahead and do that. I'm going to grab my toggle clasp, and we're just going to do kind of all of this at once. So open it up, your jump ring, and stick in the toggle, one half of it, and then close it back up. And then let's go ahead and crimp while we're here on this one side. I'm going to grab a couple more crimps. Okay, grab your beading wire that's been beaded before. And we'll just simply crimp this again. Okay, you can go back down through the beads if you want to. No pressure if you don't. It's easy enough either way. And we'll just crimp that nice and easy. Okay, I'm going to leave probably about a 1/4 inch, and I bet these should string through. And if they don't, well, we'll just have to trim it. Nope, fitting right through. Perfect. Okay, let's do the other side now. I do like it when crimps cooperate. Crimps and beading wire. All right, so let's first attach our toggle to this. Perfect. And then we will go ahead and crimp our wire on. Okay, the trick here is to be tight enough to where you don't see any slack, but loose enough to where it's not um, going to be a stiff bracelet, that it's going to form around your wrist and stay quite nice and flexible. Right, there we go. Just went down through a couple beads. Again, just double check that loop, make sure it is a size that works, and then go ahead and use your crimp pliers to make your crimp. And then trim off any extra beading wire as such. And finally, the last step is just to embellish. So if you have your head pins on hand, which I do, you can kind of pick out beads and or baubles that you want to and create little charms at the end. I'm just going to do a quick little simple loop with with one of my head pins here, just by folding it down over the bead. And then I'm going to trim it to where it's about a 1/2 inch of extra wire. And grab your round nose pliers and pick a spot that's going to give you about a 3 mm or so loop. So it's going to be in that upper part of the chain nose pliers. And then start to form your loop. And if it's still a little bit lopsided or doesn't quite match up, just cut a little bit off of the head of the simple loop and continue to rotate in by sticking it back into your pliers. and getting it nice and round and perfect. Okay, so after that, you can kind of just open it up, same way you would a jump ring. And then I think the best principle to do this is to put it on the side of your toggle. That's the loop part. That way you don't have to worry about it getting in the way whenever you're clasping your toggle together. And yeah, should we add another bubble? Since we're here, we'll add another bubble. So many different beads to pick for. I think I'm going to do some chips. Let's do some chips and change it up. Okay, let's string. I don't know. How does 3 sound? We like odd numbers, right? Okay, same thing here. Ooh, it's the size of this other charm. That's perfect. Okay, we're doing it. Go ahead and do the simple loop exactly the same way. Now I cut a little bit extra off at the end that last time, so I'm going to make this stem a little bit smaller. Grab it with your round nose pliers and turn. Okay, you should get a nice little loop there, and go ahead and open it up and attach it to the jump ring. You can always add an extra jump ring and attach it to that if you want to. There's really no right or wrong way. It just depends on what's going to be easier to clasp at the end. And sometimes having an extra jump ring makes that possible. I feel like this should be okay though. We've got plenty of room here to toggle things. Let me just test it. Oh, perfect. Oh my gosh, you guys, look at that. Easy bracelet in 20 minutes, and what a festive bracelet it is. I hope you guys give this a try. Let me flash the finished photo once more. And I just want to say thanks so much for joining me. I really love this project. It came together so quickly. I can make 100 of these in minutes. Now, provided some of it was pre-strung, so I guess I can't get too carried away. But if you enjoyed this design and you want to make it for yourself, check the video description below to see all the different parts and components that I used, including the hollow mesh you could find at silversilkonline.com. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this content. It is very important for the channel to let me know that you are enjoying watching these videos, and it gives me some ideas for making new projects, videos, designs to teach you guys. You can also follow me on Instagram, where I am posting reels and carousels that are additional sources of inspiration. And finally, you can join us over in the Silver Silk Silkies Facebook group. It is a vibrant community of designers and other Silver Silk followers that enjoy crafting with Silver Silk, and we just enjoy our little community. We enjoy our creativity and get inspired with each other. So, with that, I guess I leave you guys. Hopefully, you'll have a wonderful day, and I will see you again at the next tutorial. Bye.